For this is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men, as free, yet not using liberty as a cloak for vice, but as bondservants of God. This passage lays out a central aspect of the Christian life, living in such a way that your conduct silences the accusations of unbelievers. For this is the will of God, establishes the divine authority behind this instruction. It is not a suggestion or an optional path for Christians. It is a clear directive. God's will is for His people to live lives that visibly refute the criticisms and slander of a hostile world. 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12 parallels this command, calling believers to maintain honorable conduct so that their good works glorify God. That by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men identifies the strategy God has ordained for dealing with the world's hostility. Foolish men refers to those who lack spiritual understanding, as Romans chapter 1 verse 21 describes, where their foolish hearts are darkened. Their ignorance is not mere lack of knowledge, but willful rejection of God, as seen in John chapter 3 verse 19, which states that men loved darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. The weapon against such ignorance is not retaliation or argument, but consistent, righteous behavior. Your good works are a testimony that speaks louder than words, leaving no room for accusations against you. As free acknowledges the liberty Christians have in Christ, Galatians chapter 5 verse 1 reminds us that Christ has made us free, freeing us from the bondage of sin and the demands of the law as a means of salvation. However, this freedom does not permit self-indulgence. The warning, not using liberty as a cloak for vice, exposes the danger of misusing Christian freedom to cover up sin. Romans chapter 6 verse 1 challenges this abuse. Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Certainly not. Christian freedom is not a license to do as you please, but a call to live as a servant of righteousness. But as bondservants of God, puts liberty in its proper context. A bondservant willingly submits to their master, recognizing their obligation to serve. Romans chapter 6 verse 22 declares that believers, having been freed from sin, are now slaves to righteousness, leading to holiness. This submission is not a burden, but a privilege, as it aligns the believer's life with God's will and purpose. Freedom in Christ is found not in independence, but in complete submission to God. This passage demands a sober examination of your life and priorities. Are your actions silencing the accusations of unbelievers, or are you giving them ammunition to mock the faith? The phrase, "put to silence the ignorance of foolish men," underscores the reality that the world is watching. Every word and action you display either confirms the truth of the gospel or undermines it. Romans chapter 2 verse 24 warns that the name of God is blasphemed among unbelievers because of hypocritical behavior. Your life must be above reproach, not for self-righteousness, but for the glory of God. Doing good is not a vague concept. It encompasses every area of your life. It includes honesty in your dealings, kindness in your interactions, integrity in your commitments, and faithfulness in your walk with God. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16 commands believers to let their light shine before men, so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Your life must demonstrate the transforming power of the gospel in every situation. The warning against using liberty as a cloak for vice is particularly convicting. Christian liberty is not freedom to indulge in sin, but freedom from the power of sin. If you misuse your freedom to justify sinful behavior, you are trampling on the grace of God. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 26 through 27 warns that deliberate sin after receiving the knowledge of the truth brings a fearful expectation of judgment. If your liberty leads to compromise rather than holiness, you are living in rebellion against God. Living as bondservants of God requires total submission. This means that every thought, decision, and action must align with His will. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verses 19 through 20 reminds believers that they are not their own, for they were bought at a price. This calls for complete surrender, recognizing that your life is no longer yours, but belongs to God. True freedom is found in serving Him fully. This passage also confronts hypocrisy. If you claim to be free in Christ but live in sin, you are a stumbling block to others. Matthew chapter 18 verse 6 warns that causing others to stumble is so serious that it would be better to have a millstone tied around your neck and be cast into the sea. Your freedom in Christ must lead to righteousness, not to sin. Your life is a testimony, and any inconsistency in your walk undermines the gospel you proclaim. The world's accusations are silenced, not through clever arguments, but through the undeniable evidence of a transformed life. James chapter 2 verse 17 declares that faith without works is dead. If your faith does not produce good works, it is empty and powerless. Your life must reflect the holiness, love, and truth of God. Anything less is a denial of your identity in Christ. The call to live as bondservants of God also challenges the pride and self-centeredness of the human heart. Submission to God is not optional, it is the defining mark of a true believer. Philippians chapter 2, verse 7 points to Christ as the ultimate example of a bondservant, humbling himself to the point of death on a cross. If Christ submitted fully to the Father's will, how much more must you? This passage is a reminder that Christian freedom is not about self, but about serving God and pointing others to Him. Your life must be marked by holiness, humility, and obedience. The world is watching, and eternity is at stake. Choose today to live in a way that glorifies God, silences the ignorance of foolish men, and reflects the freedom you have in Christ. This is not a suggestion, it is God's will for His people. Live accordingly. Thank you all for tuning in and being a part of our community here at Gospel Illuminations. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button to show your support. Please share your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to Gospel Illuminations for more inspiring and uplifting content. Your support means the world and helps this channel grow. Thank you again, and stay blessed.